So this is Environmental Psychology, Unit 2, Part 2. So part of environmental psychology is not just with architecture or with natural environments, but the objects that we bring into those environments. So what I want you to do is to pause this for a second and look around you and to try to see what's in your space right now. Okay, what objects are present and why they're there. Here briefly is what I'm seeing right now, and it's a normal day in my house, kitchen over there, and all these objects have a story. But I want you not to think about mine, but to think about yours, what you have in your environment. Now, what I'm having you read are pieces by two authors, neither of whom are psychologists, by the way, but I think they're really good readings and they're worth exploring because they're very interesting. But one is by Junichiro Tanizaki, who was an author in Japan in the early part of the 20th century, and then Brad Shore, who was an American anthropologist, who wrote what he did in 1990, so in the late 20th century. Now, another concept that I want to introduce is going to really ring true with reading the Tanizaki article, and that's the concept of mano no aware. It literally means the pathos of things. It's also translated as an empathy towards things or a sensitivity to ephemera. It's a Japanese term for the awareness of impermanence or the transience of things, and both a transient gentle sadness or wistfulness at their passing, as well as a longer, deeper, gentle sadness about this state being the reality of life. And I think that, once you read the essay by Tanizaki, you will feel this sadness of this, how he really is writing about the loss of a particular culture and a particular time. It's a really good reading, so I hope you enjoy it. And also, I want you to think about this idea called wabi-sabi. You're going to be watching a video about this later, but the idea here is that what makes things beautiful are their imperfections. So that's something that is deeply, deeply in Japanese culture, is that, the thing that makes something perfect is not the fact that it has no errors, but that it does have errors. So you can see this bowl that has the little crack in it that was filled. But that's what makes that bowl beautiful, is that unique thing that makes it different. Now, here are some scenes from traditional Japan. This is the kind of thing that Tanizaki is talking about, having rice paper windows. And that really is a thing in certain parts of Japan where, if you have a good fence, you're not afraid that people are going to try to break in because rice paper is very easy to get your way through. But, this would be a traditional scene in a Japanese temple with rice paper screens and with a nice beautiful garden outside of it. And this is the inside of a Japanese building. Now, of course, modern Japanese homes don't look like this. This is I believe, a photograph of the Nijo house. It's like a ninja's house in Kyoto. And you can see that, there's lots of grays. There's no bright primary colors. Everything's encased in shadow. Here's another example of an actual Japanese home that I got a chance to see. And one of the things that Tanizaki talks about is the blackening of teeth. And you can see that both in this photograph and in the picture on the right side, the painting. It's actually probably a woodcut. You can see that they practice this blackening of teeth. Now, it's not common today. This is something from Japan's past. But that was something that he talks about. I just wanted to show you that that's not something that's just mentioned in that article. It actually is a real thing. And here's some lacquerware from Japan. He talks extensively about the darkness of the lacquer that's used. And it's true. This is what a soup bowl will look like in Japan. And here's a lantern that's very common in traditional establishments in Japan, like tea houses, where the You can see that there's no light bulb that's shown. So what occurs is that you get a very muted light emanating from these lanterns, and these are all over the place in more traditional places in Japan. Not so much in a city like Tokyo, but in a city like Kyoto, very common. And yet here is modern Japan. Okay, here's an image of an area called Shibuya, and it is, as you can see, very brightly lit. It's almost the exact opposite of what Tanizaki was describing in his time, and perhaps the thing that Tanizaki probably feared most is that this is the direction that Japan was heading. You can see here's another street. This, I believe, is in Osaka, which is a city that's near Kyoto. And this is definitely in Osaka. You can see, these are neon lights. There's nothing brighter than a neon light to illuminate your, environment. So very different than the muted lantern that I had just shown you a few slides ago. You can see how bright Tokyo is by looking at it in contrast with Tokyo Bay, where it's a body of water, so there's no light there, but you can definitely see that it's a very bright city. And, for someone who's praising shadows, it may not be the best example of a place where that occurs. Here's another street. This is, I believe, in Shinjuku. Now, Brad Shore describes American culture as modular, and what he means is that in the same way that IKEA furniture, you can go to IKEA, like I know there's one in South Philadelphia, and you buy furniture. You can really make anything out of the furniture. You can buy a shelf that's 2 feet high or 3 feet high or 4 feet high. It's very modular in that you can be interchanging things, and that's, I think, what Brad Shore is getting at in this article. So there's an example. You know what it's like to go to an IKEA store. It's like a maze, right, to get in and to get out. And it has all of this kind of furniture, which is very modular. You can see you can get a blue bed or a red bed on the left, and you can furnish it with any of the things that are in that basket right nearby. And interchangeable. So why does the table have to be at the left and the shelves on the right? That could be moved. And that's the whole idea of modularity, is that everything is separable and movable. It's not as if it doesn't exist in other cultures. That's one that's in, I believe, China. But Shore talks a bit about this, that we live our American life much like we are ordering in a McDonald's. And so I think it's an interesting analog to make. He talks a lot about malls and how important malls are in America. Just think of how much time you all spend at, I don't know what mall is your local mall, around, Rutgers, Camden. A lot of people go to the Cherry Hill Mall, and, a considerable amount of their life is spent there, practicing and engaging in this American tradition of consumerism. Here's another one, a Verizon store. And it's interesting because Shore even mentions Rutgers students. So, and their choices that they make on what courses to take. And, as I read this, I think, maybe what's made you choose this course to take? Is it that it fits in your schedule in a modular way? Or is it that you really do have an interest in environmental psychology? Either way, you're still going to be quizzed, but it is an interesting article, and I think it's well worth reading. So I want to end this by talking about how smoking kills in different ways in the US and Japan. I'm going to show you a bunch of ads, and this is sort of an example to get you thinking about the Morling reading. In Japan, in the train stations, they have these ads for about 10 years. They had this ad campaign, and I want you to notice what these ads say. A lit cigarette is carried at the height of a child's face. I moved to avoid him, but my smoke didn't. I carry a 700 degrees Celsius fire in my hand with people walking all around me. Where does the smoke go? Only the person producing it is unconcerned. A person was waving at me. He was waving away my smoke. Some people throw trash in the street. Other people have to pick it up. When someone walks a step away from me, maybe it's a silent complaint about the cigarette in my hand. Don't smoke in a crowd. Coats are expensive. My smoke is enveloping that man over there. My lit cigarette always points towards others, never toward myself. When I looked back, I realized I was colliding with the person behind me, even though we weren't touching. And I love this one. Before passing gas, I look behind me, but I don't bother when I'm smoking. Now here are some American ads, and just notice how they're a little bit different. Warning, tobacco can make you impotent. Be advised, no smoking. If we see smoke around, you will assume you're on fire and drench you with water. Stop smoking or stop breathing. Smoking kills. Smoking clogs the arteries and causes heart attacks and strokes. Select any part of the bodies below to find out what effect smoking has. Every part of your body is affected by smoking. Here's an American ad where a girl has all brown teeth because she smokes, and that affects your teeth. Here are two people smoking in underground as if they were in their coffin. No smoking, another skull. All my dreams up in smoke. Joe Chemo. I don't know if you know this because some of you are pretty young. That used to be the advertisement for Camel cigarettes, was this camel named Joe Camel. And so this anti-smoking ad re-envisioned him as Joe Chemo. New crush-proof box, Merit. Okay, so there's, again, the cigarettes in the coffin. An utter fool. So, think about what the objects around you. How do they encapsulate our culture? But also, when you go out into the world, think of how our world is set up to encourage our independent mode of being in the United States. One that emphasizes individuality and uniqueness, where standing out and accomplishing one's goals is valued, and promoting liberty and freedom from coercion. So just think about that as you go about this weekend. Have a good one.